Okay, so if you haven't noticed, we've shifted a little bit. So this morning we kind of focused on income-producing activity and doing the work. So at that stage in our metamorphosis, we're the caterpillar. We're munching away, getting fat and chubby, get ready to go into our chrysalis, and now we're in the chrysalis. And now is where we do the work for us. We focus on us. We focus on the changes that happen inside the chrysalis. Sometimes those changes are not seen by others, right? It's a gradual process. Sometimes it feels like we're never going to be a butterfly. We should be stuck in that chrysalis forever. And I don't know about you guys, but one of the areas that I have seen the most growth in my Mary Kay business is in my emotional growth. Can anyone relate? Emotional growth? So I used to think that I was really good at managing my emotions because it would only take me 24 to 48 hours, depending on the severity of the offense to me, to get over whatever it was. The problem with that is if the offense or the conflict or whatever happens at 7 o'clock in the morning, your entire day is gone. Potentially 2 days are gone. And I used to think, like, I mean, that's the amount of time, and that's really short. There are some people who don't talk to each other for weeks and months, and that is their coping mechanism. And so I felt like 24 to 48 hours, I'm doing really, really well. And so then I learned about the wheel of emotions, right? And realized that, actually, I can do that a lot faster. And I will never forget the first time it was in DIQ that I went through the entire wheel of emotions in a 15-minute shower. I was so proud of myself. But anyway, so I get to talk to you today about our emotions. And I want to start by saying that this is going to be this is a mindset shift for me. So I also think Joellen was talking about, how when you're assigned certain things. So this morning was just the morning that things did not go right. My straightener, in case you're wondering why this side of my hair is curlier than this side, it's because my straightener pooped down on me this morning. My alarm did not go off when it was supposed to. My printer ran out of ink. All while I'm trying to rush over here and get ready. And I was so flustered, I got in my car and I turned on Lauren Daigle, You Say, because that song can shift me quickly. And as I'm driving over here and I'm all flustered, I'm like, I'm late, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Caitie, you are teaching on emotional agility today. You're going to write that down. Emotional agility is what I'm teaching on today. So not emotional management, but emotional agility. And I was like, you need to get your together because this is what you're getting ready to teach on. So I want you to know that I have walked this, and God has really used this in our life, specifically in this season for parenting. It has been a really cool mindset shift for me. So I am going to talk to you today about emotional agility. First, I want to define the word agility. I thought I got it on my first page, and I don't. So sorry, y'all. Maybe it's in my notebook. That is highly possible. Oh gosh. Okay, I found it. Agility, the ability to be quick and graceful. The ability to be quick and graceful. That is the definition of agility. So I'm going to talk to you about emotional agility. The first thing I want you to know is that probably with the exception, two places that I got this information. The first one is a book called Emotional Agility by Susan David. She did a TED Talk, wrote a book. She's been interviewed by several podcasters. She is a cool chick. Great book, really a lot of profound things. I'm pulling nuggets out of the training that I got from her, and then just kind of some of my own research, and then the rest of my stuff I get from prayer time and my Bible reading. So we live in a world where there's a high value put on being able to stuff it and move on. Can anyone relate? Just put that emotion down, put your big girl panties, how many of you have heard this, or even said this, because I'm guilty of saying this stuff. Put your big girl panties on and deal. And then in addition to that, then putting on this mask of living in relentless positivity. Everything's happy and sunshine and golden flowers all the time. And when in reality, it's not. And everybody knows that it's not, but nobody wants to hear about your stuff, and you just need to put your big old panties on and deal. So for example, someone gets diagnosed with cancer, and we say, just believe you'll get better. Have positive thoughts. And I'm not saying that those things are necessarily wrong. I'm just wondering if those are the most helpful things that we can say or exhibit in those particular circumstances. In an attempt to be supportive of a friend who's going through a divorce, well, girl, he wasn't good enough for you anyway. He's a piece of trash. These are not things that are necessarily helpful in an effort, an attempt to be encouraging. We're literally telling them, stuff your emotions, push it down, don't lean into that hard emotion, just kind of withdraw from it and pull away from it, or replace it with a positive. And so I'm going to ask you to have a new thought today, and to start to ask yourself if you have the courage to lean into the hard. Do you have the courage to lean into the hard? Let's redefine, because emotions are not necessarily good or bad, right or wrong. They are just data. Emotions are just data. They are helping us, they're signals. Emotions are signals, flashing to us what our values and our purpose and our intentions are. Our emotions are really shaped very early on in our life. I heard Bridget just say, children or women should be meek and quiet, seen and not heard. You're lazy, you're bossy, boys will be boys don't cry, girls should be feminine and ladylike and keep their knees together. Okay, these types of emotions, these are things that are said to us that will drive our emotions as we get to be adults. So we'll find ourselves reacting to certain things around us based on those things that we heard in our childhood. One of the things that I heard as a child was, you're bossy. I was the oldest, and I was often put in positions of responsibility where my parents would put me in charge and they would leave. And so it was my job to be bossy. Had someone said to me instead of, and it wasn't just my siblings, like there were other people in my life who told me that I was bossy. Had someone reframed that and said that I was a natural born leader, or that I had really great ideas, but that I needed to respect other people's input as well. If that was just a shift for me, I don't think I would have such a hard time with confrontation as I do. Because often I would just kind of step back into the back because I don't want to be seen as bossy. I don't want to be seen as, too pushy. What do our societal norms convey about our emotions? Positivity and happiness are the only things that are allowed. We only value happiness. And that's why social media is so dangerous, because that's all we let people see. Now, hear me loud and clear. Please don't air your dirty laundry on social media. It's not the appropriate place for it. However, you are often only seeing what people want you to see in social media. Do you know that it was predicted that by 2030, so 11 years from now, depression would be the leading cause of disability, outweighing by far cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. Do you know that it happened in 2017? So it's predicted that in 2030, that depression would be the leading cause. And it happened, I'm really bad at math, 13 years early, am I right, JoJo? 13 years? 13 years sooner than they predicted. Why? Well, because when people are in pain, most people feel isolated, because we're told, put on a smile, breathe in positivity, take a walk. And they don't know how to talk about it effectively. And those are societal norms. That's not something that, it's just a certain group that you're around or whatever. That is a societal norm. We are told that we should be negative, and sadness is a bad emotion. But emotions just are. They help us communicate to ourselves. Negative emotions are just signals, just like positive emotions are. They're flashing signs to tell us what matters most to us, what our values, our principles, and our intentions are. When you do get angry, what does that tell you about what matters to you? Reframing the thought. When I feel sad, why? What is the feeling telling me about my values? A third of people, when surveyed, a third of people judge emotions and the emotions of others as being bad. So what we're doing is we're creating an environment where we have to stuff everything. You have to be an internalizer, unless you're going to externalize positivity and happiness, in which case externalize away. But we're creating an environment where we're pushing these emotions down. Has anybody ever had like chocolate cake in the fridge? This is called the philosophy or the theory of amplification. So if you have chocolate cake in the fridge and you're like, I know there's chocolate cake in the fridge, but I'm not going to eat it. I'm on a diet, or I'm avoiding sugar, or I'm trying to lose weight. I mean, whatever. Okay. So the law of amplification says that when we push aside and ignore something, the more we do that, the louder it screams. Chocolate cake talks, you guys, like loud and clear through the refrigerator door. It's not chocolate cake for me, it's ice cream. But it talks loud and clear. And the more you try to ignore it and push it down, the louder it is. It's the same thing with our emotions. So we defined agility as the ability to be quick and graceful, and within this emotional state, so within the ability to be quick and graceful in our emotions, the positive and the negative, our values drive our reactions and our responses to those emotions. We'll develop skills to see our emotions as data, not as directives. So the emotion is telling me what my values are. The emotion is telling me what's important to me. It isn't necessarily a directive telling me how I have to be. So the flip side of agility is rigidity. So rigidity is defined as the inability to be changed or to adapt. And then within this emotional space, this is where we lack any kind of emotional management or emotional agility. Within this state, our emotions run and control us. So I want you to draw 2 boxes on your page with a space in between, just 2 boxes, just enough for you to write a couple words in them. On the box on the left side, I want you to write stimulus. This is the thing that causes the emotion to occur. So it might be a rough day at work. It might be someone chewing your butt. It might be someone cutting you off in traffic. It might be something as severe as a diagnosis or a lost loved one or a family member. It might be the dog pooping on the carpet for the 82nd time that week. It could be anything. So the stimulus is what causes the emotion. Then on the right-hand side, I want you to write response. The space in between is our power to choose what our response will be. And that little space between the stimulus and the response is where we have growth and where we have freedom from our emotions controlling us. The problem is, most people take those 2 boxes and just squish them together. So now we have stimulus, immediate response, stimulus, immediate response, stimulus, immediate response, with no thought process to what is causing the emotion, what is it telling me about my values, my principles, my beliefs, and then moving into an appropriate response. Is crying an appropriate response? Yes. Is getting angry an appropriate response? Yes. There are lots of things. You guys, it ought to make you angry that Pensacola is really, 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 really high on human trafficking. That ought to make you so angry you could spit. Really, there are lots and lots of things that where anger is a very appropriate and normal and healthy response. The problem is when we don't have that space between the stimulus and the response. When we connect with false ideas around happiness and we're actively chasing that happiness, or at least what we perceive as happiness. Because would you not agree that sometimes when we perceive happiness, it looks like happiness because it's happening in someone else's life, and then when you're actually living it, you're going, this is overrated. So when we connect with false ideas, we actually become more unhappy. So when we're not connecting with appropriate ideas of happiness, we come back to that law of amplification. So we're connecting with the false ideas of happiness or chasing what we perceive to be happiness, and the negative emotions actually become louder and larger. When we have the false idea that we have to chase happiness or we have to be happy all the time, we actually stop being authentic and we're unable to connect well with others. So that don't let your emotions show, be positive, be happy. You are actually creating a wall between you and others and your ability to be relatable and to be vulnerable and to be authentic. We create a mask. We stuff the negative. Now, again, hear me. We're not talking airing dirty laundry. That is not what I'm saying at all. So you really have two responses when a negative emotion comes up. So in between the stimulus and the response, there are two that you typically probably will default to. And both of them are kind of extremes. What we're trying to do is find something really happy in the middle of these two. So the first response is typically to bottle. So we bottle up, we stuff our emotions, we push them aside, we try to ignore them, we try to distract ourselves. That's called an internalizer. So I actually have a child who's an internalizer. The problem is he can only internalize so much, and then what happens? Yes, it will be like he stubs his toe on the coffee table, and the past 6 days of emotional bottling just erupts out of him, and then it takes an hour and a half of conversation to figure out why the not really hurt toe made him just explode. And then I have an externalizer, and an externalizer tends to brood. Talk about it all the time. I have an externalizer. So something happens and he will remind you 3 days later of how you did him wrong. And he's only 5. God have mercy on my soul. So fixate, go over and mull it over and over in your mind. Analyze it, think about it. Keep thinking about how so-and-so did you wrong, or how that wasn't fair, or this particular situation shouldn't be happening. But if we can label our emotions more accurately, so I'm angry, I'm sad, are you angry or are you frustrated? Because those are two different things. Are you angry or are you discontent? Those are two completely separate things. So labeling our emotions more accurately allows us to understand the cause of the emotion more accurately. So for example, I'm stressed. Okay, are you stressed because you're overwhelmed? Because you are disappointed? So let's say stressed at work. I'm overwhelmed. Maybe I'm learning a new system at work. Is it a temporary thing? Is it a permanent thing? I'm overwhelmed in my situation. I'm disappointed. I didn't get a promotion I wanted. Someone else did. No one's listening to me in the conference room. Or maybe I'm in the wrong career. So you see how I'm stressed has so many, and that's just 3. There's a ton more that we can go into, but it has so many more labels underneath it, but we just bottle cap it off with I'm stressed, and then we live in this state of stress where we're pushing the stress down, constantly trying to push it down and sit on it and pretend that everything's great and everything's happy and everything's positive because no one wants to see that we're stressed. But labeling your emotions more accurately is so important to your health, your relationships, and your literal, actual ability to accomplish anything. Remember that chocolate cake? So we stuff it, and all we do is think about it. It's always there. It's just underlying. And the more we try to ignore it, and the more we try to push it down, the louder it becomes, which affects your ability to accomplish anything. Now it's screaming so loud at you, it's the only voice that you hear. So, the psalmist David, David, a man after God's own heart, and we look at David sometimes and we're like, David was a flipping hot mess. A seducer, a murderer, a fornicator. David was a not so cool dude, but God calls him a man after God's own heart. and he's called that in Scripture. And so there's the Psalms are broken down into several categories, but David really masters this concept of emotional agility. Like if you want to look at a Bible character who had emotional agility down, it was David. And if you read the Psalms, you'll see, like, sometimes his Psalms are like, oh God, you're amazing, and the sky is blue, and the grass is green, and the birds are singing, and the flowers have never smelled so sweet. And then other times, he is literally on his face and is like, God, you have forgotten me. Who is ruling this world? Who is running this show? Like, I mean, and kind of, I mean, like, sometimes I read the Psalms and I'm like, David, you're a little bit disrespectful. Like, this is the creator of the universe that you're talking to. So let's see. I have it here. Psalm 13. I'm going to read this to you. It's really short. It's like 6 verses. But I want you to hear David leaning into the negative emotion, leaning into having the courage to lean into that negative emotion. So Psalm 13 says, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? Is that really true? Does God really forget us? No. Is David being dramatic? I really don't think so. I think David's just leaning into what he's feeling. I think he's leaning into his negative emotion. How long will you hide your face from me? Really? David? How long must I take counsel in my own soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Do you guys ever read this and go, really, like David is being a hormonal girl here? Like, really, he is just, but really, truly, he is just leaning into that negative emotion. He's leaning into what he's feeling. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death, lest my enemies say I have prevailed over him, lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken. And almost every lamenting psalm, the last couple of verses, he just goes, whoop, and does a 180. The last 2 verses say, but I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. And so what you see is him not avoiding and stuffing that emotion, but you see him leaning into that. And that is where we can see that shift start to happen, because he's not avoiding that emotion. He's leaning into it, and then he goes, oh, but wait. God really hasn't turned his face from me. God really hasn't forgotten me. My enemies can't do anything that God does not give them permission to do first. And then you see that shift happen. So instead of brooding or bottling, or instead of saying, I am angry, what you're doing is you're taking that emotion, you're personifying it to who you are. And the reality is if we can reframe that and restructure that to say, I'm feeling mad, I'm feeling disappointed, I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm having the thought that no one is listening to me. No one is considering my feelings. We talk to our boys like this, and this is what I'm saying, like I've lived this for the last year. We don't tell our boys, we don't say, why are you crying? We say, why are you feeling sad? Or we'll say, what are you feeling? Because then it helps them stop, pause, and identify what they actually are. Now, they're too big to understand the difference between disappointment and frustration right now. We're just working on sad and mad, okay? But the reality is they will sometimes stop. They'll just be crying. Okay, you stubbed your toe, your brother hit you. Are you hurt? What are you feeling? And so sometimes they'll say, we have assigned colors. So I will tell you what they say and then what they mean. They will say, Mommy, I feel blue. And blue is sad. And so then we can unpack that. Well, why are you feeling sad? Not why are you sad, but why are you feeling sad? Because feeling is just a temporary emotion. It's data. It's telling us what's happening internally, what's happening in our brain. And so ask yourself, what is my emotion signaling to me? What feeling? What value? What's important to me? And what is my emotion telling me about that? So your emotions tell you what your values are, but our values are qualities of action. So family, health, relationships, work. We can't avoid negative emotions or discomfort, and you'll hear me say this again later on, but Susan David, the author of the book Emotional Agility, says, discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life. I'm going to say that again because it's really good. Discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life. We don't want to be uncomfortable. Our emotions don't own us. We own our emotions. The emotions are simply that data. They're not directives. Our emotions tell us what's happening inside of us, what our values and our principles are. They don't tell us how to respond. We tell ourselves how to respond. If we find ourselves overcompetent in our relationships or work, so we're bored in our relationships and work, we're playing it safe and there's no challenge. So if we're finding ourselves understimulated or everything is very, very predictable, we're probably playing it safe and we're just kind of taking a step back from our emotions and from challenge and from hard. On the flip side of that, if we find ourselves over-challenged in relationships, work, etc., and there's no break to the unpredictable or the stress, it can be really stressful and exhausting. We'll find the most meaning and success in life when we can work and live at the edge of our ability. So here's my ability. My ability is to stand at a party and instruct 3 women how to put skincare and foundation on their face. Let's live on the edge of that and do 6. Let's live on the edge of that and stand and present in front of a room full of 30 women. Let's stand on the edge of that. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's constantly a progression because we grow along with the process, but we're living on the edge of our ability. We're not throwing you out into the deep end. We're not saying play in the kiddie pool either. We're just living on the edge of our ability. So how can I strategically, practically, how can I have a healthy relationship with all of my emotions? The first thing you can do is have compassion with yourself. Compassion with yourself. The first thing you can do is have compassion with yourself. I said it before, but do not label yourself as the emotion. That emotion is simply data. It's just data. Don't label yourself as emotion. Ask yourself, why are you feeling this way? But don't personify that to yourself. You can make mistakes and still be okay. This one has been really powerful for me in becoming a mom so fast to kids who've come from kind of a tough spot. Talk to yourself with the same kindness you would exhibit to a 5-year-old. Now, if your 5-year-old is genuinely, authentically hurt, Faith's little boy fell off the bump bed the other day and split his ear. I guarantee you Faith did not go in there and say, I've told you 150 times to keep your head at the other end. She has, but what did you do? You ran in and scooped him up and calmed him down and cleaned up the blood and told him he was okay and mommy was there and he was safe. Talk to yourself the same way you would talk to a hurt 5-year-old. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? And know that it's okay to feel what you're feeling. The feeling is just the information. How you respond to that feeling is the important part. Your response is the important part, and that's where you have control. Be really specific with labeling your emotions. Don't use generic words, sad, mad, that type of thing. You be really specific. And then know that it's not weak or lazy to let your emotions run their course. That it's not a sign of weakness for you to be sad about something, for you to be disappointed or frustrated. It isn't lazy if you don't just put your big girl paintings on and deal.
So it's not weak or lazy.
It's not weak or lazy to be compassionate with yourself. If anything, it's a sign that you're less lazy and more courageous when you're willing to put the time and the effort in to really identify what these emotions are and how they bring value to your life. The second way you can have a healthy relationship with your emotion is to be courageous. what I'm talking about today was a complete mind shift for me. And so I find myself reacting the way that I've always reacted, and I've said several times before just today, but I'm so grateful that it was part of God's plan for us to foster and adopt first, because I think if God ever gives us biological children, I will parent them so differently based on having to parent broken and vulnerable children first. It just gives you a different perspective. And so I catch myself sometimes reacting to my kids the way I react just kind of across the board. So, and I've apologized to my kids. Mommy did not handle that well, and I'm sorry. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay for this not to be an area where you feel comfortable. And don't feel like you have to rush to fix the negative emotion. Just show up authentically and lean into. Be like David. Lean into that hard emotion. I know not everybody here, I am not a huge journaler. I have tried. For years, I have tried to be really diligent, really consistent. And I usually journal when I'm in a hard spot. For some reason, that's really cathartic for me. And so write down as though no one is reading, because really no one is except you and Jesus, and he knows your heart anyway. But write down exactly how you feel. Be raw and real. Remember that the feelings and the emotions are just a data read. It's just like a computer scripted printout of your values and your intentionality in your life. Be authentic to your emotions and show up, even when they're hard. The third way is to be curious. How can I best describe or label my emotion? What's the best word that I can use? A thesaurus is your friend. Create a new language for your emotions. So prior to being a mom to my boys, I would have said, "Why are you sad?" But he's not sad, his emotions are sad. His emotions are giving me a read on what's happening internally, but I'm not going to personify sadness onto my child, because he's not a sad kid, but he has moments of sadness, just like we all do. Why are you angry? Well, why are you feeling frustrated, or why are you feeling angry? And then I tell my kids, it's okay to feel, and fill in the blank. Is it okay for my kid to feel angry? Yep. It totally is. Is it okay for my kid to feel sad? All three of them? Yes. All at the same time, usually. Yes, it is. It's okay for them to feel that way. And my kids now will say, if they're disappointed about something, like this morning I'm leaving, only one of them was awake. And I've been gone a lot in preparation for this week. And my 5-year-old was up, and he is very, 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 very much a mama's boy. Thank you, Jesus. I needed at least one. But he's very much a mama's